Thank you, Deacon Dennis and Kimberly. Someone asked a question about why they don't see all of the other participants. You will only see the 6 of us, but there are another 179 souls out there that are listed in the participant list. And even though you have your video cameras on, your videos are not being broadcast, and you do not have the capacity, as Kimberly said, to speak to the whole crowd. It's just going to be unmanageable at 181 people trying to speak all at once. If you have questions in addition to that, then please type them in new, and Kimberly will monitor those questions, I hope, and respond to you as needed. I'm going to do really 3 things to kick off this day. First, even though Deacon Dennis started with a prayer, I wanted to start with a portion of a psalm that is included in the midday prayer that the priests say every single day, and it's a portion of Psalm 119. I won't read the whole psalm because it's 176 verses, but I will read 8 verses because they're indicative of really the whole psalm. Every verse has some kind of praise of God for His order, for His command, for His wisdom, for His justice. And so we'll start with verse 41. Thy love never fails. Let it light on me, O Lord, and thy deliverance, for that was thy promise. Then I shall have my answer to the man who taunts me, because I trust in thy word. Rob me not of my power to speak the truth, for I put my hope in thy decrees. I will heed thy law continually, forever and ever. I walk in freedom wherever I will, because I have studied thy precepts. I will speak of thy instruction before kings, and will not be ashamed. In thy commandments I find continuing delight. I love them with all my heart. I will welcome thy commandments and will meditate on thy statutes. Psalm 119, really a litany of praise to God for His commandments, for His wisdom, for His order, for His law. And as Catholics, these Psalms are particularly important because we do have a profound reverence and respect for natural law, for law in general, and that respect we recognize as necessary because it gives us structure out of which to operate. And that structure is so important in the course of our days, and particularly in the culture in which we presently live. We face, and just a personal note to all of you teachers and administrators, I have no doubt, and I deeply sympathize with all of you as you face the impact of the COVID shutdowns on your school, on your administration. And even though this type of meeting is better than nothing, the reality is it's not much better than nothing. You know, it's not close to being really in person present to others. And I know that many of you are engaged in online teaching, and you see the kids and you know that it is not adequate. And so you face the same frustration that I face, a frustration of not being able to do what you know you long to do, and that is to bring these children into your classrooms and interact with them and to form and inform them in accord with what your mission, your vocation, inclines you to do. At the same time, we recognize the presence of a form of fear, a fear that if we would do that, we would compromise perhaps the health of these children, For some of you, compromise your own health, compromise the health of their family members. And so that fear generates a caution that we have to be aware of and conscious of and pay attention to, but it does not make it easier. And so I just want you to know that I experienced that same sense of helplessness, that same sense of frustration, that same sense of fear. I would love to go to parishes and invite everyone in and have mass as if nothing was going on. For myself, I wouldn't care. But for the harm that it could do to the community, and a part of our Catholic tradition is certainly a vested interest in caring for others, watching out for others. And so we cannot always do what we would want to do. We must do that which is deemed to be right and good and proper in the present circumstances for the overall good of society. So certainly the COVID shutdown, and hopefully this day can serve for you as a little bit of a reprieve where you're not the ones running the videos. You're not the ones responsible for the content. You are the recipients. And I hope that in the hopefully relative comfort of your own home or offices, you can do that with a kind of calm and peacefulness and with a tremendously open mind and heart to the messages which will be provided for you today. These messages are not new, but they are not necessarily messages that we hear in our culture on a regular basis. We have a huge challenge before us in the culture. And I've told any number of people in my private discussions that it is, in many ways, a crisis of anthropology. And by that I mean, what is man? The Second Vatican Council, in its document on the Church, that has these beautiful passages where it recognizes that there are questions which are asked universally. And here's what the Church Fathers said. In the face of modern developments, there is a growing body of men who are always asking the most fundamental questions and are glimpsing them with a keener insight. And the questions, what is man? What is the meaning of suffering, evil, and death, which have not been eliminated by all of the progress that we have made in this world? What is the purpose of these achievements purchased at so high a price? What can man contribute to society? What can he expect from it? What happens after this earthly life is ended? These are foundational questions, and they touch the nature of the human person. And the nature of the human person, when we ask these questions, who is man, the first thing we have to recognize and boldly proclaim is an identity that says we are creatures of God. By baptism, we become sons and daughters of God, but God made us. He didn't simply put a lump of clay on the table and say, make something of yourself. He created us as human beings, as human persons, and that humanity carries with it a God-given definition. It carries with it a God-given dignity. This is who we are by virtue of the fact that God made us this way. We have, as we recognize very strongly in this COVID culture, we have a strong social nature. We have a need to interact with our brothers and sisters. We are physical creatures. We have a need for physical contact. We have a need for emotional support. All of those things are a part of who we are as human persons. Unfortunately, society, and even the mechanism by which society has shut down in lieu of the COVID, think about this. There is great attention to human physical health, and all of the concerns touch only physical health. And though there are attempts to say, wait a minute, The shutdown is affecting people's relationships in marriage. It's affecting the emotional health of children. It's affecting how we view one another. All of those things are touching our humanity. And the argument is, well, we're saving human life. Yes, we're saving human life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in some ways, perhaps we are sacrificing humanity and essential elements of our humanity. But society, see, recognizes that we are only material creatures, and therefore only the material nature matters to society in our secular materialistic culture. Only that matters. For us as Christians, as Catholics, what matters is humanity. What matters is our human dignity. So despite the shutdown, we have to struggle within our own families and our own lives and our own selves to maintain humanity in its richest, fullest form, because that's how God made us. And even though culture and society in its present view of man, its anthropology, does not recognize man as composed of body and soul, right? We are, in fact, body and soul, not only a body. But because the world views man as only a body, then the physical health becomes the be-all and end-all of existence. And therefore, preservation of this physical life becomes the God. And it also reinforces, and this is kind of another piece of this, reinforces a godlessness. I was reading recently something in a commentary on the fall of Adam and Eve, which I'm sure Monica will cover a great deal, because a great part of St. John Paul II's theology of the body is a reflection of the Genesis story. But this commentator on the Genesis story takes a little twist on it, and he links it with the fall of Satan. And says, what was Satan's big crime? I want to be like God. What was it that he wanted to be like God? And the answer was, he wanted to create something from nothing, which was a godly act. And he speculates that Adam and Eve kind of wanted to do the same thing. They wanted to create something from nothing. Right? They wanted to create good and evil out of nothing. And modern man, I think, is in this moment of wanting to create from man, which he views as nothing, to create man from nothing, and ignore the fact that God has already given something to man. He has given him an original nature, and even though it's unpopular and politically incorrect to say, he has given us sex and gender, male and female. He created them. That's a God-given. Society wants to say, no. God just gave us a blank slate, and we, being godly, create ourselves. That's a wrong anthropology. It's a godless anthropology. It's a purely materialistic anthropology. And it is not consistent with our Catholic viewpoint, our viewpoint of mankind as sons and daughters, creatures of God. Our day today is really designed to touch some aspects of this God-given nature. And specifically as it touches sex, gender, and relationship between men and women, there is a certain givenness that the church speaks about in terms of sex and gender. We don't make that up. We are not in charge of that. Those things are given. And because they are given, our role, our duty, our responsibility is to understand what has been given, and with a degree of humility, unlike Adam and Eve, and unlike Satan, with a degree of humility to accept what God has given and to be grateful for what he has given us, and to foster a profound respect for what God gives and continues to give. So hopefully our day will touch on this basic question: what is man? Who are we? Why are we here? How did God make us? And how are we to live out as fully as possible and to bring to the young that we encounter, how are we to bring to them this deeper view of humanity, this profoundly respectful, God-given notion of humanity in such a way as to be bold in it ourselves and able to enunciate those truths to the students when the opportunities present themselves. And so with that, I rarely talk for more than 20 minutes, so that's sort of my maximum. I'm sure there are other things that I could say, but just maybe one final word relative to COVID, and just a word I have here, is we have to be profoundly cognizant of what we're being told in society repeatedly. And what we are being told is that we must protect ourselves from others. And boy, that's a very, very damaging message. I used to tell couples who were preparing for marriage, said, if you use various methods of contraception, those are wrong, but it sends a message to your spouse: I need protection from you. Yeah, it's a theoretical act of love between man and woman. We need protection. What kind of language does that say? But what we are seeing in our culture is everybody's wearing masks, and we have to do that. And I'm not fighting with the fact that we wear masks. We must recognize that it sends a message, and that message penetrates us over time. I must be protected from other people. And we have to make sure that we don't end up isolating ourselves to the detriment of our humanity and to the detriment of human values and principles, and even to the detriment of human dignity. And when you hear that people cannot have funerals because of fear of COVID, and people cannot have their weddings because of fear of COVID, and people cannot do a hospital visitation to a loved one because of COVID. So, time out. We have to be careful. At the same time, we have to be careful we don't lose the important aspects of our humanity. So, good to be with all of you. I pray this day is fruitful for you, and that it gives you information and some material to chew on, because it is difficult, challenging, and important material. So God bless all of you, and we'll turn it back over to, first of all, Monica, and then to the other presenters. So Monica, welcome. Good to have you with us.